Long Didn't Read, brought to you by the Alan Turing Institute, the National Institute for Data Science and AI. Hello and welcome to Too Long Didn't Read. I'm Jonah, a content producer here at the Turing.
And I'm Smera, a researcher in data justice and global ethical futures, also at the Turing.
Smera, you look different, haunted, forever changed. How was Glastonbury?
Oh, yeah. You could say I'm still dealing with some of the consequences of my actions, but there's definitely some dark circles or emotional dark circles that I don't think I'll ever recover from. But overall, I think pretty amazing.
Good. Well, in the 1 month since our last episode in June, my children have begun their summer holidays. Smera has expanded her mind at Glastonbury, exploring the myriad ways you can consume food from a can, and we have a new government. On this episode, we will explore AI's less obviously cool, but more kind of sophisticated and intriguing cousin, data, at London Data Week.
And as many of us have experienced our own version of the effects of the housing crisis, we ask if AI landlords are a help or a hindrance.
And as the Olympics kicks off in Paris this month, we examine the official Olympics AI agenda.
Last month, we spoke about the use of AI within politics, inspired by the announcement of the UK's first ever chatbot to stand for government, AI Steve.
AI Steve didn't win, but it was a great story and it got me researching more and more into the polls, predictions and statistics for the election. I'm probably late to the party here, especially talking to a researcher at the National Institute for AI and Data Science, but I started to realise there were all these other stories that the data was telling. Like, I know the main story, Labour won the election, but I started looking at the voter statistics and learned things like, as you get older, you're more likely statistically to vote Conservative, and that although 18 to 24-year-olds all voted similarly, women that age are twice as likely to vote Green than men, and men are more likely to vote to the right. Those stats are from YouGov. I'll put them in the show notes. So all this data raises loads of interesting questions that give much more nuanced insights and made me realise that we so often prioritise the AI element in our podcast rather than the data science bit. So, luckily enough, this month, London Data Week happened, and we're going to talk about it and all its data-y goodness.
That's right. And I'm very glad that you're starting to see the joys of data.
Yeah.
So London Data Week is a week-long distributed festival of events across the capital which aims to engage all Londoners in topics and issues related to data and essentially get more people involved in this data conversation. Events were organized by a whole variety of organizations, businesses and public services with the main aim of reaching different audiences using all sorts of different methods and formats. And today we are joined by one of the co-founders of London Data Week and a colleague of ours here at the Turing, Jennifer Ding.
Hi, great to be here.
Jen is a senior researcher for research applications here at the Turing. She is interested in projects that shape technology to improve daily life, using computer vision to expand what we can see, natural language processing to better understand each other, and online networks to build offline relationships. Jen, you describe yourself on your website as a data scientist interested in shaping technology to help us human better. I like that. Can you tell me how technology can help us to human better?
Yeah. Oh, what a great first question. I feel like in many ways, sometimes when we talk about what data science and AI can enable, we focus on very technical or mathematical skills. So we want to, solve an algorithm more quickly or efficiently, or detect more things in an image, or produce more text. And all of that is good. But I think another interesting outcome of some of our technologies is that they can also shine a little bit of a light onto society and each of us and help us understand how we work, how we think. It may be some problems in that, but also through that lens, help us figure out how to connect better, where our blind spots are, and ultimately help us human better.
So this week, we're shining a light on data and not so much on the AI part of it, the application part of it for once. So with that in mind, why is data important? Why should we be excited about it in its own right?
Yeah, I mean, my first thought is data is what makes AI possible. Without data, there would be no AI. The classic data science phrase is garbage in, garbage out. So, good data, good quality data is essential, the foundation of powerful AI. And what makes good data? people. So data is all of us. It's what we produce. It's, on us. So I think because of that, we all really have a stake in both data and also AI.
How do you think London Data Week can help reduce or respond to the skills gap in AI and data?
Bridging the digital divide and helping more people who are interested upskill in data and AI is a big focus of London Data Week and a big focus of the organizations that put it on, Turing, the Mayor of London, and Lottie. And one way we approach this for Data Week is by trying to make things fun. So hopefully through fun and also making the events as accessible as possible. So making them free, spread out at different times of day, put on by different organizations in different locations. Hopefully this just creates more on-ramps for more people to discover and get involved.
Yeah, I definitely learned a lot from the session I attended, the data storytelling at Canva. I thought it was really fascinating how suddenly these kind of charts and graphs and visualizations of data that I was kind of familiar with suddenly started to tell different stories when they were presented in different ways, or you see them from different perspectives. I thought that was really cool. And sometimes the stories it can tell are emotional and quite impactful.
Yeah, no, I think it's such an interesting point. I think in many ways, data can be used to give a certain picture or make a point, but it's a missed opportunity if we miss out on the personal and the beautiful that data can offer too.
I think this is a good time to go off on a slight tangent and meet some of the excellent speakers and hosts of a few of the sessions from London Data Week, starting with Mike Bronbjerg.
Yeah. Hi, Jonah. Good to see you. I'm Mike Bronbjerg, the Data Viz and Information Design Lead in the City Intelligence Unit at the Greater London Authority, or the GLA.
So you were part of the data storytelling session, which was a series of talks, panels and workshops that aimed to transform data into powerful narratives. One example of data being illustrated in a way to aid storytelling was a 3D flower that you created. Each flower head and every stigma and stamen coming from it represented a piece of data. It was very cool, but can you tell me why presenting data in a original or unexpected way helps tell the story of that data?
Yeah, I think it's obviously mapping data in a less traditional way and in a more sort of innovative way gives you a very different perspective on that. It's creating a branding and a kind of a visual hook for a project or a data project that is sympathetic to the data. We've presented it in a way that is thematic with the subject of the data. And in this case, it was about well-being and sustainability. And one of the measures of well-being and sustainability was access to green space. And so that's the data we use to map to this 3D flower structure. And we use the structure of the measure itself in the flower heads of this piece. And so I think one of the things that always comes back to mind is a thing that I don't know if you've heard of Jer Thorpe.
No.
He's done a lot of data visualization and he's written a book called Living in Data. And one of the things he talks about is the fireworks effect of his project.
Okay, go on.
First, you get the, ooh, that's pretty. And then you get that of insight and recognition afterwards.
Yeah, that's good.
So it's not to stop at this point of like saying, oh, that's pretty. Anyway, move on. It's like, that's pretty. That's the visual hook for the project. And then you go into then revealing the insight. So yes, we did this work as a kind of data-driven decorative element, branding element of the project, but also we then moved into a more traditional dashboard to sort of deliver the insight and the toolkits needed to work on well-being and sustainability in London.
So there we go. Thanks very much to Mike Bronbjerg there from Greater London Authority. I love the ooh and the ah of data visualization. Smera, since you definitely provide the insight, that would make you an R. And me, I guess, an ooh. Never thought of myself as an ooh. So having explored how the Greater London Authority use big data to reach London-wide audiences and even advise on policy, London Data Week also focused in on the hyperlocal. We spoke to Alex Crook, who is the communications lead for the public policy programme at the Turing, about the workshop she ran.
I ran a workshop called Data Detectives, Decoding Census Data for Local Placemaking, with my colleagues Natasha Nicholson and Pamela Charlick, who are behind the Community Data Trust Prospect Brixham in the town of Brixham in Devon. During the workshop, we looked at Office of National Statistics open access data relating to a small neighbourhood area of London. So what we really wanted to learn from our participants, who came from a real range of backgrounds, some had very strong data backgrounds, some worked for local authorities or were computer scientists, and others were just interested in how they could leverage hyperlocal data to make changes in their own local area. We wanted to understand what they understood from this data, how to paint a picture of a place through data alone, and also what's missing and where you might find that missing information, how you might gather it.
So what exactly was the data that they were given?
So the data that they were given about this area was all of the data that is collected in the census, which happens every 10 years. This includes things like number of families in a household, number of single person households, age range across the area, educational range across the area, whether people are working from home, whether people are commuting, multiple kind of indices of deprivation. So you can really build some form of a picture about a place from this data, but there's also a lot of data that's missing. One thing that all the participants from our breakout groups presented back to us is that although the census data is able to build part of a picture and they're able to learn certain things from the census data and take certain inferences about the area, it certainly doesn't paint the full picture. It certainly doesn't give them all of the hyperlocal information that they need in order to develop policy effectively, in order to make suggestions for how the quality of life for people living in this area might be improved. At the heart of what we were trying to achieve with this workshop and what Prospect Brixham's Data Trust is achieving is the idea that data empowerment is only good for local communities. It will only create more empowered local communities and communities that are able to identify their problems and advocate for themselves.
Amazing. Thanks so much to Alex Crook there. We will, of course, link all the resources Alex spoke about in the show notes, including Prospect Brixham's Data Trust and the census data from the ONS website that the workshop used. Smera has been out and about in London Data Week too. In fact, she even participated as a member of a panel of experts. Maybe they lost my number or I was busy or something. Her session was exploring whether AI is beneficial to society. Is it, Smera?
I do believe there are beneficial uses of AI in society, and it can bring a lot of individuals who might not have the opportunity or accessibility to many fields. This might totally change that, and this is not even to go into pharmaceuticals and all the other industries that we know AI can support. But as one of my panelists said, your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they didn't stop and think whether they should, which I think is a great way to begin that conversation on whether AI is beneficial to society. And one of the biggest takeaways, I think, for me personally, is that we should keep an eye on how things progress in the future and what we can do to make it even more beneficial to everyone in society. There was a session that I think some of our listeners would be very keen to learn more about. It was called Memetivism for Feminist Data Literacy. And I was really excited to learn a bit more about the bits and bobs behind the scenes from Sinem Guruchu herself, a design researcher and data activist who ran the workshop.
I'm Sinem. I am the founder and director of Feminist Design. Feminist Design is a small community but also an organization which is approaching design through feminist perspectives, but also using design and creativity for feminist advocacy.
That's really good to hear more about your background. So, Sinem, could you actually give us an introduction to what memes are and how you see memes playing a role in online social interactions or political commentary, for instance?
Memes as mediums that are often characterized by their humorous and viral nature have become a widespread form of online expression, shaping the way we engage with and understand a lot of contemporary issues. Maybe you have seen the recent news that actually the Biden election campaign was looking to hire a meme manager. That is really showing something, right?
Yeah. That's the pride and joy of 2024.
Yes, definitely. Because we all know, we all have shorter attention spans now. Memes are powerful to give a message in a really, short amount of time. And we have seen it is playing quite a big role in political discourse recently.
How do you see memes and this kind of work evolving in the future?
Memes are still used for a lot of awful purposes, and there are a lot of very harmful sub-communities you can still see. But there are also communities and meme makers who use memes for a lot of amazing things as well. One of the most outstanding areas for that for me has been how climate justice activists are using memes. And to be honest, it was very inspiring, and it was one of the main inspirations for me. They're active literacy rather than passive literacy. You just only consume, you also create, content. It's also exploratory rather than, instrumentalist, but it's like most importantly, it's very creative rather than just like quantitative content. So yeah, I see memes really playing a big role in shaping how people advocate for their rights. Meme is like you produce something, you put on internet, and someone takes it and builds on it. So if you put something racist, it's very likely it's going to keep growing racist, So it's really important that people get excited about this, and then they start producing their own memes, like feminist memes. And then once those are put on internet, the other memes will grow on those. So the change doesn't, happen in a day. But it's really about reclaiming the landscape slowly and putting all those counter content online as well.
Thank you so much to Sinem for taking the time to speak with us today and giving us an insight into their fantastic work. Be sure to follow her work at feministdesign.co to find out more.
Jen founded London Data Week with Sam Nutt from Lottie, the London Office for Technology and Innovation. So we caught up with him to find out what role he thinks data plays for London and Londoners.
Yeah, I think there's so many different ways you can look at it. Data already affects how we live our lives. We use apps like Citymapper that's built on open data that the GLA, the Mayor of London, have been releasing for a long time, and we've sort of cultivated all this innovation, but it's really, improves how we live our life. Not just Citymapper, it's hundreds of apps. So if you've got particular accessibility requirements, your shopping or weather or, just all sorts of things. We all live our lives in ways informed by data.
And throughout the week, was there any session that you found particularly impactful or original?
There's one that I think was a really cool event. On the Saturday of London Data Week, I got to have my brain scanned whilst I was listening to my favorite song, which is All My Friends by LCD Sound System. Having the really personal connection to the data itself. That was really cool, I think.
Yeah, that is very cool. And we just so happened to catch up with Becky Inkster from that very session.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Becky Inkster. I'm affiliated with Cambridge University Psychiatry Department. I'm also a co-founder of the lab, and I have other hats that involve AI, conversational systems, always mental health, and often neuroscience.
So thanks very much for talking to us, Becky. We've learned a fair bit about the lab on the Turing podcast that you and Mark were on recently. So if you want to hear about the lab in more detail, then the episode will be linked in the show notes. But maybe you could give us a very quick summary of what the lab is, because that's what your pop-up was about at London Data Week.
Of course. So the lab is just this beautiful serendipitous thing that came together. Mark and I are very good friends. We are both neuroscientists, and we're very passionate about arts, creativity, and really thinking outside the box when it comes to science. So the lab is effectively, we use a portable lightweight EEG brain scanning device, so we can look at brain activation. And importantly, it's in real time, so we can work with people when they're having their moments. So we're always guided by what the person wants to do, or people. So ethics and ethical literacy and teaching ethics to the public and engaging is really at the core of our mission, because as you can imagine, these sacred thoughts and moments, they could be used for other purposes. So we really want to protect people and just treat it as a positive experience, not to exploit or to profit in any way.
So I think we should come to some details in a moment. Could you tell us, on the lab website, it talks beautifully about the moment, and you mentioned it just now, the moment. Could you maybe explain what the moment is, and then tell us about the pop-up you did at London Data Week?
Sure. So a friend of mine, George the poet, who I've worked with in the past, I scanned his brain. It was a very beautiful moment. And he wanted to do a freestyle rap about Tupac on the anniversary of Tupac's death. And again, this is his moment, his choice. And being there beside him in person, watching his brainwaves, just dance around, it was just unbelievable. One of his waves, his brainwaves in particular, called the delta wave, it was just so different from the other waves. The other waves were just tightly just sticking together and really kind of almost focused, but the delta wave would just jump up in this beautiful curve and then come back down again. And often, it is associated with sleep, but I know George wasn't sleeping. He was very much awake. So it's also associated with dissociative thought, or in his case, freestyle. So trying to think outside the box, stretch his mind, his flow state. So that was really fascinating to be able to see that in real time in a very artistic and a very professional wordsmith kind of way.
So cool.
Yeah. And so we had 6 people pop up with us at the Creative Computing Institute. Yeah, it was positive that people, but not surprising, that people want to get inside their own brain and experience something they've always been curious about. We scanned people who wanted to eat herring, which might be really yummy for some people, but it might be hellish for others. And she would sniff it for 2 minutes. It was really hard to watch. I don't know how she did it. She sniffed it. She ate it slowly. There's so much to unpack in the data. It's really strong signals from her brain. It was just very scientific, but hilarious as well. We had someone do the Macarena dance. At first, they sat still and they wanted to dance. You could just see they wanted to move. So that was funny to see the brain having to restrain itself and not do the dance while the music's on. And then they did the dance sitting, and then they did the dance, the third part of the song, standing up and actually getting fully involved. So there's a ton of data, interesting stuff with that, and a few people listening to music. So we were able to start to look at beat analysis and just the way that the song and the brain waves are dancing around together. Where do they synchronize? Why are some parts of the song, the lyrics or music really relevant, and their brain changes in response to that, vice versa. So yeah, that's kind of an overview of the pop-up.
That's honestly so cool. There was one question before we even started that I was keen to ask both Jonah and you. What piece of music would you listen to if you had to scan your own brain, Jonah?
I knew you would ask this, and I'm in turmoil about it. And I was thinking I could do like the aware that people are listening answer, the cool answer, and then I thought I could do the true answer. But then I thought I would do a piece of music that my parents love and I don't, but it's like always played at family funerals and stuff. It's a sad piece, St. Matthew's Passion by Bach, and I would like to see if my brain does anything. I'd like to see if I'm not familiar with it enough to know what's coming, but I would like to see if my brain can sort of feel the empathy that towards my family, how they feel about it. Because I mean, it makes my mum cry every time, kind of thing. Sorry, mum, if you're listening.
Wow.
What about you, Smera?
Piece of music. Recently, I heard about this artist called Olivia Dean, and she has this brilliant song called Carmen about her grandma who moved over part of the Windrush generation. And that song is just so beautiful, made me cry. Kind of want to see that, but at the same time, I also want to know what my mind would be like while listening to Faithless, God is a DJ.
Good tune.
I think they're both very busy. Significant songs.
You have to have variety, right? That's the fun part about it.
Yeah.
So, Becky, when you were experimenting with the EEG yourself, do you have any things that you did that you'd like to share that really surprised you with what the activity was?
Not I won't go too deep on what I've done, but no, I've done a lot because I just wanted to experiment on myself, and Mark experiments on himself too before we start really, deploying it kind of thing. I've scanned myself at 35,000 feet. That was pretty cool on a flight to Toronto. No one really noticed. I was just looking at my phone and scanning my own brain. So that was kind of cool. I've scanned myself like upside down because we wanted to look at the the blood related, blood brain, some of the measurements that come out. So we wanted to just validate that I'm definitely upside down and then I'm getting up. So that's some painful stuff just to like validate that things work.
I suppose one thing that I was wondering, and also from listening to the Turing podcast that you and Mark were on, can you, because it's quite a visual thing, could you explain to me and our listeners what exactly you'd see on the screen, and if you can, what it might sort of mean in a basic way?
Sure. So much like heart rate. So if you imagine, if anyone has seen their heart rate over time, or if you just imagine what the number is when you get it checked by the doctor, and it will fluctuate, it will change over time. So it's just like a line that will just kind of squiggle across the phone or the projector or the device that you want to visualize it on. And it's so we capture the heart rate information. When people move their head around, they'll see sort of peaks and troughs and like curves, and the lines change as they move their head in different XYZ orientations. When they accelerate their head really quickly, you can see that in the data as well. When it comes to the brain, there are 5 waves that we're capturing in 4 different locations on the brain. So 2 are at the front, the right and the left of the frontal lobe, which is sort of the CEO of the brain, organizes things, executes a plan, kind of runs the show. And then we've got more of the auditory, like sort of side brain near the ears, the temporal lobe. We aren't trying to dive too deep into the actual neuroscience, because we want to make it accessible. We want to make it portable. People can walk around the city streets, bump into people, have conversations, and not have gel and things that are stuck into their hair when you have these EEG heavy caps with lots of wires and things. So it's very light touch. It's in the moment, and it's the individual that matters. So we'll always ask for, a couple minutes of like a baseline resting rhythm, just relax, but just imagine you're a car engine in idle, and just capture that information first. And then we compare it. Your moment, we expect that it's going to be significantly different, potentially, or not, and it doesn't really matter. But yes, that's really what we're trying to look at, that the moment compared to when they're resting and just relaxing. And we go through all the different brain waves. It's very challenging to, like, as a neuroscientist, to summarize something. So not crudely, but, just rapidly. But because it's their moment, it just clicks instantly. It's really deeply personal. And the meaning, it makes sense to people because it's already so deeply embedded in them. And we just try to offer a little bit of insights about the neuroscience behind it. But as you know, it's so complicated. The brain is so complex that to reduce it down, it wouldn't be ethical.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So it's almost like the data is intuitively understood by the participant and nobody else, kind of thing. Or maybe you and Mark.
Exactly.
That's really interesting. And I'd really like to know, how do you see events, experiences and pop-ups like this contributing to the data that makes up London?
That is a beautiful question, because to me, it just shows individuality and that everyone has a story. Everyone has a narrative, and just bringing that out makes you just really appreciate humans for their uniqueness. And having that moment, London is such a fast city, but you can still grab a moment. You could stop someone on the street and say, do you have a moment? And they'll instantly know what they want to do, or they'll give them a couple minutes and they'll say, yeah, this song, or, oh, can I do this dance move? And just anything. Can I do mathematics? It was a really good one that I had for 3 hours. They wanted to be scanned. So it just shows the beauty of humanity. And I think we need that right now, because everything is so tech and AI heavy. And I use those things. But we forget sometimes that humans are really beautiful and powerful, and our minds are just so much more than reductive algorithms.
Beautiful answer. I think that's you've nailed it there, Becky.
I think I cried a little.
Oh, I should have been scanning you.
Thanks again to Becky. Do check out the Turing podcast for an even more in-depth interview with her and the lab co-founder Mark Shepherd. We're back at TLDR HQ with London Data Week's Jen Ding. Jen, I understand you got your brain scanned with Becky. What was your moment, if you don't mind sharing?
In my case, that was drink tea.
Nice. And what did your brainwaves do?
There were all over the place. That first sip of hibiscus tea really triggered something.
So, Jen, London Data Week is wrapped. Do you have any farewell words for us? Anything to get us excited about next year's event or future partnerships and plans?
So we really want London Data Week to be for everyone. Some organizations we hope to work more with in the future. Arts and culture, some more businesses and startups would be lovely as well. So really just expanding to the parts of the London data community that we haven't connected as much with yet. And the week is really a space for organizations who might be new to public engagement to give it a try.
Well, thanks so much, Jen, for talking us through the brilliant London Data Week. People, no doubt, are getting excited about London Data Week 2025. Where can they go to find out more info or get involved?
If you visit londondataweek.org, you'll have some more info there on how to express interest in 2025, reach out to us through a contact form, or just learn more about what's happened in the past. Hope to see you all next year.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So, Jonah, as the world continues to find yet more uses for generative AI, some actually useful and some less so, I've noticed a few stories which concern me. One story from the New York Times documents how landlords are beginning to find a use for chatbots. Now, in an ideal world, that would be fine. Make a job easier, right? But as someone who rents in London, the potential issues that are already being seen here send shivers down my spine.
London is a tough place to be renting, yeah. Worth noting, though, that this article is about AI landlords being used in the US. We haven't seen any big stories from the UK yet, but no doubt could be around the corner. Tell me ways that AI is going to make it better or worse?
So first, for the vulnerable big community of global renters, an AI landlord is not an ideal future. See, I often hear horror stories of landlords who refuse to fix or respond to their tenants unless to expect their rent at the end of the month. Now, imagine a bot starts responding to you.
So the landlords are using AI as customer service, essentially, right? Wouldn't that be good in many ways? Like having 24/7 availability, that would be really useful for communication when when issues with speed arise.
So you could say that having access to your landlord 24/7 could be good, but chatbots are likely to be the first and only major point of contact for renting a prospective flat. The New York Times article reported that chatbot companies based in the US are serving millions of customers already. One individual did not even have a human landlord or agent to show their prospective flat.
Yeah, not ideal, but I presume that we're predominantly talking about landlords that have lots of properties. Most of the times I've rented, it's been from a landlord with one or two properties and I've had direct contact with them. That's not going to change, is it?
Maybe not, at least for a while. But according to the English Private Landlord Survey commissioned by the Department of Levelling Up in 2021, although only 18% of landlords own 5 or more properties, they are responsible for 48% of tenancies. So if this does become commonplace, it's going to still nearly affect half the renters in the UK.
Wow, yeah, that's a lot. I did come across some other uses of tech in rental markets. A report by ProPublica found that a US-based company called RealPage is driving rental prices in the country. Have you heard about this? Can you explain how that tech works? That sounds quite scary.
First of all, I would encourage all listeners to read the fantastic reports by ProPublica who have covered some of the most controversial uses of algorithmic technology. This includes differential pricing and unequal loan provisions, amongst others. But coming back to the recent story that you mentioned, from what I gather, this software may be artificially inflating rents. Based on claims of dynamic pricing, the algorithm essentially collates rental prices within a given area to give landlords a way to, and I quote, outperform the market by 3 to 7%.
Oh, wow.
See, You can argue that this is data driven, but on a closer look, it may be entirely artificially driven. The same report spoke to an individual who found that her rent was rising, but she was met with responses that her rent was actually lower than the market rate. But this was during the pandemic where many were leaving the cities. The individual later also found out that there were new units in the same building that were being advertised for less than what she was currently paying as her rent.
Okay, yeah, not particularly fair.
Essentially, these are antitrust cases which go against the rule of law, particularly in countries that support more free market models that are built on the very basic foundation of competition and price wars.
What can we do to protect ourselves then? What's in store for the future of the UK housing market?
So the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development released a study which found that the UK had about 468 houses per 1,000 people in 2019. This was actually similar to the Netherlands, Hungary, and Canada. But what's really shocking is that we actually have a greater number of houses than places like Poland or the Czech Republic. Yet those countries still have cheaper housing despite having lower supply.
Yeah, and this is a major issue for people who are renting. Things are potentially looking up, though. This month, the King's Speech has unveiled several significant proposed bills. Nothing much about AI, but one for renters, called the Renters' Rights Bill, which, amongst other things, will make it harder for landlords to boot renters out with no-fault evictions, make it cheaper and easier for renters to resolve disputes through a new ombudsman service, and landlords would have to give reasonable consideration if a renter wants a pet. Anyway, back to the point, we should mention how AI can help with the housing market problems. Research has been done by the Turing's very own Omar Guerrero, who tested a digital twin of the UK housing market data to simulate policy interventions. Omar's study found that merely increasing housing stock would not reduce housing wealth inequality. Instead, he suggests that policies should be more well-rounded and consider factors like regional variation, income, taxation, and so on, in a more cohesive way. Another example of how data is providing that nuanced information that blanketed implementation of chatbots doesn't.
Yay, we have a mid-recording AI for good story. Definitely a great way to finish off this segment and give our listeners a bit of hope for a more affordable housing future.
It's time to turn on the TV anytime, day or night, for a quick ego check. There's nothing like watching people who are a million times stronger, faster, more agile, focused and dedicated than you to give you some perspective. It's Olympics time!
Yes, and although football did not come home after the Euros final, Team GB do have hope for a greater medal tally in Paris.
Absolutely. The Olympics this month and the Paralympics next month. It's an exciting time for sport lovers. Do you follow the Olympics, Smera? Do you cheer for Team India?
I do follow the Olympics, and fun fact, I actually did climb for the Indian team for the Asian Youth Championships in sport climbing years and years and years ago.
Wow.
But it was really fun. It was definitely one of the most exciting times of my life to wake up at, I think, to be at the stadium by 5 a.m. for training, go to school, come back, go back to the stadium to train again. And I would miss weeks at a time of schoolwork to just climb, which was fun. But
that's so cool.
But on the other side, I will also add that it really opened my eyes to the inequalities of funding within sports. As you can imagine, India has many, many incredible sports people, but often we see funding going to the more popular sports as opposed to not climbing. But this has changed a lot in the last few years, especially with climbing now being an Olympic sport. And I will. That's my favorite category to watch this year. What's yours, Jonah?
Yeah, that's cool. Well, skateboarding was introduced a couple of Olympics ago, and I love, as an ex-skateboarder, not at a national level, but I love watching the skating.
So coming back to the main stories, Olympics on an AI podcast. We've got enough controversies in categorization in sports. Hopefully no robots in the running.
Well, you joke, but next month sees the annual FIRA, which is the Federation of International Robo Soccer Association, Robo World Cup event, which maybe we'll touch on next month, but it's quite interesting, and there are robots. Anyway.
Robot v robot or robot v human?
Wait and see.
Oh, exciting.
So part of research in this podcast is to keep an eye on big cultural events and see if they have an AI or data science angle. And sometimes the links feel too tenuous and we're forced to pass stories by. When we were looking into the Olympics, we were delighted to learn that they had a very comprehensive AI agenda with a 2-hour film to learn about it on their website.
I'm not going to lie, I was also really surprised to see this. I mean, we do see technology being used in sports. Most recently, for instance, I learned about connected ball technology and video assistant referee or VAR being used in the Euros. I did hear from friends, though, that not everyone is very keen on this kind of VAR technology or technology in sports.
Well, VAR could have been the saving grace in the Euros final, the second goal from Spain. My brother was sitting next to me going, offside, ref. And then they used VAR and he wasn't offside. So it could have been brilliant. But yeah, I think fans are keen on it when it goes in our favour and less so when it doesn't. So the Olympics AI agenda talks a lot about how AI can help fairness, trustworthiness, accessibility and well-being of athletes, as well as making coverage more accessible for audiences. It takes a fair bit of delving into the agenda to find out how they might do these things, though. I found mentions of tools like generative AI for automated translation and dubbing, facial recognition for security in stadiums, autonomous vehicles for transporting athletes, and even AI-powered robots to translate, guide, and carry luggage for athletes. Some of the more advanced tools I saw mentioned include 3D athlete tracking, which basically gives viewers data about an athlete's performance in real time, and biomechanical tools to analyze and display speed, position and distance during races. And as you mentioned, the kind of computer vision cameras like the video assistant referee. Smera, it's obviously great that the Olympics are taking a forward-looking approach to AI, especially that they're considering how they can use technology to make games fairer and more accessible. But it's still early days to how useful it'll be, right? Couldn't a lot of what they call AI be considered to be plain old predictive analytics?
I think we have addressed some of this in earlier episodes. Very often we see companies, not only in sports, slap AI on any device, even when it may be basic data analytics and not the levels of advanced machine learning. The more philosophical argument, of course, is what really constitutes AI, but I don't want to go down that rabbit hole today.
My arrogant washing machine claims it's AI. It's definitely
I think
not.
Mine does too.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. Oh, washing machine AI, robot wars, football. Again, coming back to the story, the Olympics AI agenda for this year does respond to this increasing use of technology in sport. The IOC, or the International Olympic Committee, has released this strategy document with the intent of bringing together all the stakeholders, which we of course love. This includes athletes, international federations, Paralympic committees, national committees, and other organizations together to understand the risks and the benefits of AI in sports. The document lists out 5 guiding principles which address collaboration, tradition, improving fairness, and so on.
Yeah, I came across the Paralympics Committee of Aotearoa, New Zealand's website, where they mention the use of technology as a conduit for fairness for disabled athletes. They list the uses of racing wheelchairs or sensor technology like Tritonware for swimming, which can track data on swimmers' techniques and races. They write that technology in the Paralympics is not just about enhancing performance, it's about challenging societal norms and redefining the concept of normal, in inverted commas.
That is really cool. I think there have been a lot of debates in the recent years on whether a form of technology is essential for performance or a case of performance enhancement. But more than that, I also think there is a crucial issue of access to that technology itself, even in the case that assistive technology is approved resoundingly. Athletes from countries without the same funding in sports may face an unequal playing field. I mean, even outside of the Indian case that I mentioned in my own experiences with climbing, we have also seen instances of inequality in sports very often. There have been cases where athletes, if I'm not mistaken, competed in basic footwear against athletes with far more resources than just way better running shoes. In that way, I can see how it's a good thing to introduce an AI agenda focused on fairness and equal access to technology.
So how, then, can the technology in sport be made more fair?
I came across a lot of interesting papers on this. For instance, one of the papers from 2009, this is before the London Olympics, I believe, notes how funding and research create drivers for the market for assistive technology. Very often we see assistive technology being developed for an aging population who require this kind of technology for daily movements. But when it comes to Paralympians and their cases, it's completely different. You have a far younger population who are far more active, far more healthy, and a different body type itself very often. And they don't have the large enough market to develop the kind of assistive technology that they need, focusing on their bodily aspects. But this is not an uncommon issue. Even in general healthcare technology, many venture capital firms will only fund those projects which can return the highest profits. In many cases, the markets are far too small to produce those profits, leading to cases where certain healthcare devices that perform well on, say, white males from higher socioeconomic backgrounds are still going to be released, despite the fact that these devices perform poorly on marginalized groups. This applies to the Paralympics as well, wherein the market has been biased, as I said, towards an aging population, and there is still more R&D required for the younger athletes who require assistive devices. The same paper did also suggest the introduction of further categories in the Olympics. And this category division would be based on the grounds of those who use technology freely. So no limits on what kind of assistive technology you can use. And the other category would be one which have restrictions on, say, the nature, the level of the assistive device use.
So would the governance framework that the International Olympics Committee are proposing help solve some of the problems that we see happen with big tech and AI?
In a sense, yes. It is a trustworthy AI framework, which is very much welcome, but it may not have the stringent enforcement mechanisms of other regulation. However, even having a framework that acknowledges trust, fairness, and equity of access in technology is a great step forward. I am keen to see how this plays out, and if such frameworks gain traction in other sport federations outside IOC-linked organizations, maybe even in the robo-football wars.
We'll see. So as the IOC beautifully put it in their AI agenda, as with sport, so too with AI. We will move faster, reach higher, and become stronger. Together. Thanks very much, Smera, once again. See you next month.
Thank you so much for having me. Oh, no, not that way. I'm not a guest. What am I saying? Sorry.
You're not a guest. You're an OG.
This is a lovely chit-chat, Jonah. Sorry, head is so fried. What am I saying? I have to just say bye.
Recovering from Glastonbury. Night. Bye.
Bye, Jonah. See you next month.
Thank you for listening. Thanks to Joe for standing in for Jessie this month. And please like, subscribe, other social prompts. Feel free to email us. In fact, we encourage you to email us at podcast@turing.ac.uk. Until next month.